You thought you were ready. You prepared your points. You entered the room with intent. And yet you lost control before the first word left your mouth. They didn't interrupt you. They didn't challenge you. They didn't even speak first. But somehow, the entire room adjusted to them. They weren't louder. They weren't smarter. They weren't faster. They were still. And that stillness set the tone for everything that followed. You kept talking. They kept holding. And the more you explained, the more the frame drifted further from you. You felt it, that quiet, invisible shift in power before any content was exchanged. So let's ask a question no one's taught you to ask. Why do the quiet ones so often win? Why does the one who says less become the one everyone leans toward? Why does your logic fall flat while their silence tightens the room? It's because power isn't taken during the conversation. It's anchored before it begins. They didn't dominate the topic. They dominated the tempo. They didn't win the argument. They won the environment. And while you were focused on words, they were already shaping emotional gravity, presence, pace, pressure, positioning. You missed it because no one told you where to look. No one told you that control doesn't start at the surface. It starts beneath it. The ones who truly lead don't wait to speak. They calibrate the room before speaking is even necessary. They don't chase influence. They become the center, silently, strategically. And once that center is established, nothing you say can override the emotional frame they've already installed. So now you know, if you're speaking first to prove value, you've already surrendered the frame. Because this game isn't played with words. It's played with signals, energy, density, stillness. And if that's true, then what exactly is this game we keep losing without ever seeing it? Let's break it open. Let's start with a truth you were never taught. Every conversation you've ever had was not about information. It was about frame. Not what's being said, but who defines the context of what's being said. Who sets the emotional rules of engagement? You thought conversations were equal. You believed in logic, clarity, communication. But underneath all of that, there's a war you didn't know you were part of. A silent game of pressure and presence. And the first person to set the frame wins long before the content even begins. Let me show you. You say something powerful, logical, useful, but it falls flat. People don't respond. They nod. But they're still locked on someone else. Someone who said less. Someone who's already defined what this moment feels like. That's frame control. They didn't need better points. They didn't need charisma. They just got there first and held steady. Because here's the secret. Words don't land on neutral ground. They land on terrain someone else already shaped. If that terrain was calm, stable, confident, your words get elevated. If it was insecure, chaotic, uncertain, your words get dismissed, no matter how true. And you've experienced this. You felt invisible in a room where your energy didn't match the tone that was set. You've been dismissed, not because you were wrong, but because the frame you entered had no space for your voice. They framed you before you even opened your mouth. And here's where it gets brutal. You weren't just ignored. You were cast. assigned a role, before you had a chance to choose your own. That's how fast emotional framing works. Milliseconds, micro-signals, unconscious dominance. So, no, you didn't lose because of what you said. You lost because the game had already started, and you arrived mid-match. Now the question becomes, what happens when you stop speaking to be heard and start shaping the space you speak into? Let's get surgical. Frame begins where others stop noticing. Before words, before logic. Before you try to say anything important, someone already controlled the atmosphere. What anchors the room is how you carry tension, not emotional tension, not panics, but calm, condensed pressure. The kind that says, I don't need this room, but this room might need to recalibrate to me. Humans are wired to track emotion, not through thinking, but through sensing. Mirror neurons constantly scan for emotional regulation. They align with the system that seems most rooted, not the loudest, not the smartest, the most grounded. That's why stillness isn't weakness. It's not submission. It's a command issued through silence. One calm presence in a reactive room creates dissonance, and that dissonance forces a shift. Everyone else begins to regulate downward. Speech slows. Body posture softens. Momentum dissolves. Not because they were told to, but because the strongest emotional frequency always wins. We call it presence. We call it influence. But it's just the absence of instability. That absence becomes the frame. Stillness creates contrast. When everyone else is quick to fill the silence, you become the one who shapes it. That's how anchoring begins. No announcement, no energy burst, just non-movement, with weight. It's the emotional equivalent of gravity. It pulls without pushing. It stabilizes without reacting, and people feel it before they understand it. Frame anchoring doesn't work because others are weak. It works because others are in motion. They're adjusting, explaining, performing, trying to match a tempo that isn't even theirs. You, on the other hand, have no such need. And that's what makes you magnetic. Containment becomes influence. It's rare. It's controlled. And in a world addicted to emotional output, the one who can remain composed becomes the center of alignment. Anchoring doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for validation. It simply holds steady until everything else moves around it. The person who holds emotional weight without dispersing it through nervous energy automatically becomes the reference point in the room. This isn't about being passive. It's not about hiding. It's about emitting just enough stillness to force others to question their own pace. It's about slowing things down just by existing and watching the environment fold in your direction. That's the quietest form of power. No instruction, no assertion, just quiet resistance that makes other people synchronize with you without realizing it. You don't need to dominate with effort. You dominate by not yielding. Because the room doesn't follow words. It follows gravity. And when your gravity holds, they slow, they watch, they wait for you. That's not social skill. That's frame density. And the ones who master it don't move toward the frame. They become it. They don't speak first. They set first. They don't take your frame directly. They wait for you to leak it. And most people leak it willingly, without even realizing. Not in breakdowns, not in weakness, but in micro-adjustments that seem harmless. You nod too quickly. You laugh before they do. You explain something that didn't need to be explained. You say, "I could be wrong," but you're not speaking from position. You're managing discomfort. And in doing so, you're giving away control. This is frame leakage. It's the slow unraveling of presence. The way your nervous system reveals that you're trying to stay safe, to stay liked, to not disrupt the room. But power doesn't belong to the agreeable. It belongs to the grounded. And grounding isn't about being cold. It's about holding tension without flinching. Because tension is not the enemy. It's a currency. And whoever holds more of it quietly leads. The moment you try to reduce pressure, you signal. You can't carry it. And that signal is the invitation. The person across from you doesn't need to dominate. They just need to notice that you're self-adjusting to stay comfortable. Once that's felt, they've already won. They now control the rhythm. And you, even with good words, are just decorating a frame that's no longer yours. It's not about who speaks more. It's about who moves less. Who holds when it gets tight? Who pauses without panicking? Who refuses to fill the silence just to smooth it over? You lose the frame when your need to be understood becomes more important than your ability to contain yourself. Containment is the quiet muscle behind presence. It's not loud. It's not visible, but it's felt. And people respect it instinctively because it signals something rare. I'm not adjusting for your comfort. I'm anchored in mine. That's what makes people recalibrate. Not performance. Not dominance. Just the refusal to leak. No laughter that doesn't belong. No filler to save awkward air. No emotional giveaway. Just density. Held. When you stop leaking, you start pulling. When you stop chasing resonance, you start creating it. That's the turn. The shift from needing to be heard to shaping the space you're heard in. It's subtle, but it changes everything. Because now, you're not trying to connect. You're letting others step into your stillness. That's what presence is. Not performance. Not approval. Stillness without apology. Your nervous need to be accepted is the opening they exploit. Close it. Hold your posture. Let the tension rise. Let it hang. Because when others move first, you hold the frame by default. And that leads to the next layer of strategy. If containment is the foundation, then silence is the weapon. Let's step into it. Words don't set the tone. Energy does. And energy shows itself before speech through behavior. Micro-behaviors. Pre-verbal signals. The quiet ways you reveal who's truly in control. Anchoring doesn't start when you speak. It starts the moment you're seen. Most people leak control early. Fidgeting, fixing their shirt, checking their phone, touching their face. All of it signals emotional instability. Even if your voice is calm, your body's already said, "I'm managing pressure, not mastering it." Stillness isn't about looking confident. It's about removing all reactive movement. True silent anchoring means resisting the nervous urges to adjust. It means choosing stillness in moments others would rush to fill. Try this. Pause before you speak. Just 1 second. Hold it. Let silence thicken. Let the weight shift in your direction. Even when you know what to say, withholding it for 1 beat makes your voice heavier. People don't lean in because of your volume. They lean in because you don't rush. Every time you wait, you raise your value. Next, hold your gaze. Don't dart. Don't search. Just stay in contact, without pushing. Presence isn't staring. It's anchoring. It says, "I'm not moving emotionally, and neither is my attention." Now add breath. 1 deep inhale. Steady. Silent. Full. Then release. That single breath regulates your system and tells theirs, "This person leads the emotional tempo." The brain syncs automatically. Mirror neurons begin to adjust. The room slows. Subtly, unconsciously, and you haven't said a word. That's control transferred through regulation, not dominance. In these first 5 seconds, your nervous system does the talking, and most people ruin them by apologizing for their presence with movement, with tension, with noise. But when you refuse to leak, you become undeniable. People expect talking. What they don't expect is someone strong enough to let silence work for them. Silence with density becomes gravitational. You don't need to impress. You need to compress. Less motion, less breath, less noise, more control. Even in fast environments, meetings, interviews, debates, those who hold stillness shift the room, not through charisma, but through contrast, because silence with control makes others behave differently, without realizing why. You're not demanding attention. You're allowing it to land on you without flinching. And that permissionless confidence sets the tone. The body speaks first, and the one who speaks second often speaks louder. That's silent anchoring, not performance, not pretending, just calibrated resistance to every impulse that would shrink your presence. Stillness creates pressure, but when that stillness is sustained, it becomes authority. This is where the dynamic shifts, from personal control to environmental command. It begins in silence. You walk in calm. You hold your pace. No leakage. No emotional spike. No compensating behavior. And suddenly they begin to sink. They soften their voice. They slow their delivery. They sit straighter. They hesitate before replying, not because you asked, but because the room is adjusting to your rhythm. This is frame lock. It happens when your internal state becomes the dominant tempo that everyone else aligns to, without even noticing. They aren't reacting to logic. They're reacting to nervous system authority. You didn't speak louder. You didn't take control through force. You simply refused to move first. And the pressure of your stillness did the rest. In this state, your energy compresses the environment. The moment you become the most stable presence in the room, everyone else begins calibrating around you. That's when frame becomes locked. They don't just adjust outwardly. They internalize your tempo. It becomes their new emotional baseline. And the longer you hold, the deeper the lock. This is how silent people command crowded rooms. How negotiators win without pushing. How tacticians control the field without speaking first. Their secret isn't what they say, but what they never surrender their emotional rhythm. You've seen this in high-stakes meetings, during intense arguments, even across the table in moments of intimacy. The person who stays still, who doesn't flinch, who lets silence sit, becomes the reference point. They don't dominate with words. They dominate with presence. Because in conversation, the one who sets the pace controls the emotional frame. Once that happens, everything tilts. Others hesitate more. They second guess. They try to match your depth, your tone, your gravity, and they don't realize they're doing it. That's the beauty of frame lock. It's compliance through mirroring, pacing through resonance. You never say match me, but they do because it feels safer than resisting. They'll sit the way you sit. Speak slower if you're slow. Whisper if you lower your tone. It's not obedience. It's emotional synchronization. Your nervous system has become the one they trust to follow. And the more grounded you are, the more the trust takes hold. In this state, you're no longer sharing space. You've become the space. Their choices, their speed, their eye contact, even their silence are now shaped by your presence. That's psychological gravity. And it doesn't require effort. It requires non-reaction. Hold your posture. Breathe without urgency. Speak only when it adds weight. This is frame mastery. And once frame lock sets in, you don't need to chase influence. You just let the room settle around you. Anchor first. You've seen it. You felt it. Maybe you were the one who folded when the silent one didn't. The shift wasn't caused by a speech or a clever line. It was caused by anchoring. The person didn't dominate. They didn't react. They simply refused to move. And the room adjusted around them. That's not personality. That's presence engineered. Now you understand the architecture behind it. We don't win influence by being louder. We win it by leaking less. The one who speaks less but holds more emotional gravity is the one everyone ends up watching, waiting for, deferring to. Presence is built in the unsaid, in the pause before words, in the slowness before motion, in the refusal to rush in. Most people rush to establish dominance. But the ones who hold frame let dominance form around them. They don't arrive to perform. They arrive, and everything else performs for them. Because real power doesn't interrupt. It doesn't convince. It doesn't adjust. It sets. Let's make this practical. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to outwit. You don't need to match their speed. In fact, the more you match them, the more you lose your frame. The move is to become the gravitational constant, the one that doesn't react to the spikes in the room, but holds such emotional density that everything else begins to orbit you. You hold posture. You hold gaze. You hold silence. And in doing so, you hold the frame. That's how you speak. Before you speak. You make them adjust before you've said anything at all. Because by the time you do speak, they're already calibrated. That's how power moves, without asking for permission. So here's your challenge. This isn't theory. This is pressure training. For the next 24 hours, enter every room, every call, every exchange, without the urge to fill silence first. Don't introduce yourself with noise. Introduce yourself with control. Let them speak first. Let them fill the space. Let them try to find your rhythm. And the moment you feel them adjusting, that's your signal you've set the frame. Hold your posture. Breathe with intention. Wait one extra beat. Don't reward every question with instant access. Don't fix every pause. The world is built to chase attention, but from this point on, you'll become the one who receives it, without asking, because you're not entering rooms anymore. You're becoming the room. And once you become the room, you never have to fight for space again. You become the standard, the rhythm, the weight. So, if this clicked something deep inside you, if it made you realize how much you've given away by reacting too fast, explaining too much, or oversharing just to feel safe, now is the turn. Comment below. I anchor before I speak. Let it be your new identity, your baseline, your inner contract with silence. You're not here to impress. You're not here to be decoded. You're here to observe, to hold, to watch the world adjust to your containment. No more chasing. No more leaking. From this moment forward, you don't speak first. You anchor first. And that is what makes the room yours.